In this video, we're going to solve the quadratic equation x squared minus 4x plus 2 is equal to 0. What we notice is that we can't solve this one by factoring, so we're going to try to solve this by completing the square. I do want to remind you that when you see solving a quadratic equation or any equation set equal to 0, that means you're finding the zeros of the function. That means you're finding the x-intercepts of the function. You're finding where or what's the x value in which the graph touches or goes through the x-axis. So that's what we're looking for. I'm going to set up my equation so that we have x squared minus 4x plus 2 is equal to 0, and I'm going to go through my checklist for completing the square. The first thing it asks is that we have 1x squared, which we do. So we're going to go to step 2. Step 2 says for us to kind of factor out the 1x squared. So we have the x squared and the x term inside of our parentheses, and our job is to go find h and h squared. So let's do that. We know that h is equal to 1/2 the coefficient in front of x. So we can see that that's going to be that minus 4. So I'm going to erase the x because h is just a constant, doesn't have the variable attached to it. And we find that h is equal to negative 2. When we square negative 2, that's negative 2 times negative 2, we get a positive 4. Step 3 in completing the square is that we need to add h squared in the parentheses and subtract a times h squared on the outside. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to come back up here and we're going to have x squared minus 4x. I'm going to put that in parentheses. I have my plus 2 on the outside, and I'm going to have it set equal to 0. We said we needed to add h squared inside the parentheses. So h squared is 4, so plus 4 here. And what this does is that it makes this a perfect square trinomial. That's what it means by completing the square. You're making or completing the perfect square trinomial. Now that you've done that, oh, I need some space, so I'm going to make sure I create some space here, because we also need to subtract ah squared. What does that mean to you and me? That means I need to multiply our 1 that we have on the outside times our 4, and then we're going to subtract it over here. So we're going to multiply it out and then subtract it. So now we're able to, so step number 4 is to factor our parentheses, and it will factor into x plus or minus h, depends if h is positive or negative, squared. And we add the outside numbers. So let's see what that means for us. So we're going to get our parentheses. We still have a 1. We don't have to write it out in front, but we do know that this perfect square trinomial will factor into x minus 2 squared. So remember that h right here was a negative 2. That's why we have a minus 2 here. Then we're going to add the outside numbers. That's going to be minus 2 is equal to 0. So now we've got to solve this. We're going to add 2 to both sides. And that's going to give me x minus 2 squared is equal to 2. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget plus or minus when you do it on the right side. So what does that mean to me? I'm going to have x minus 2 over here because the square root and the square undo each other. So I just have x minus 2. And on the right side, I'm going to have plus or minus the square root of 2. Solving for x, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And we're going to find that x, this became 0, is equal to, this 2 down here is a whole number, so we're going to write that first, plus or minus the square root of 2. That reminds us that our solution set has 2 points, or 2 values, 2 plus the square root of 2, as well as 2 minus the square root of 2. And this is our solution set. Because we know graphing so well, I'm going to come down here and have x minus 2 squared minus 2 is equal to 0. So remember, graphically what this means is I'm getting this quadratic equation and I'm graphing it. So I'm just going to roughly sketch it over here. We know that this is a horizontal shift 2 units to the right. So I'm going to put that in yellow. That's going to be our vertical axis. And then we have minus 2 going down. So I'm going to go down 2. And here's our new origin. We don't have a multiplier, so that just means we need to graph our parent function values, which is over 1 up 1, over 2 and up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 3, 1, 2, 3, up 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the axis of symmetry, which is this vertical yellow line, tells us I only have to go the same distance the other way. So over here I went over 2, so I got to go over 2 this way. And we can see our parabola doing this. In fact, what we have found with these x values that we found in our solution set is that this one right here where it crosses the x-axis is 2 minus the square root of 2 because it's less than the value of 2. And then we can see that this one over here is going to be the value of 2 plus the square root of 2. So if you think about it, 2 plus the square root of 2, I know the square root of 2 is 1.4. So plus some more decimals. So we can see this is going to be about 3.4, and we can see that in our graph. That's probably, it's before we get to the 4, but definitely after we get to the 3. And we can see the same thing that's happening on the other side. So I just want to let you know that when you are solving a quadratic equation, you are looking for the x-intercepts. And in particular, you're actually looking for the x value of where it crosses the x-axis. Those points where it crosses the x-axis is called the x-intercepts. That concludes this video.